I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Geno TV and Channel 99. We have a special guest with us today, Jim Perelman, Sheriff of the County of Nantucket.
Good morning, Dan.
Jim, welcome.
Thank you.
So you're in the first leg of your second term. What possessed you to run again?
Well, to run again, well, I got myself into I felt like a nice position. Mm-hmm. I liked the job the first term, the first 6 years, so I decided why not continue.
Were there any surprises in the job the first 6 years?
I think I was surprised at how much is going on here that I didn't know about, and probably many people don't know about.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
What are some of the things that
Well, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that nobody's aware of. There's a lot of crime here. There's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse, which is unfortunate. It makes us a little bit like everywhere else.
Should some of these things be talked about more, do you think?
I believe so, yes.
And why aren't they then, do you think?
Well, I think things are coming up that they are being talked about more. People are more aware of it.
There was an incident I heard about, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there was an incident at a after-hours party maybe a month ago that was supposedly in a warehouse owned by a local business.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do,
and,
I do.
And I never saw another thing about it in the press or anything else. Maybe there was nothing to do. Maybe there was no...
I think it's in the court now. There was a victim, of course. The victim has survived. Apparently it was touch and go at the beginning, but the perpetrator is still in the court system.
But what about the venue? Was the venue...
The venue is a warehouse, a dairy warehouse out in Mid-Island. You know, I wasn't aware that those events happened before.
Was there an issue with that? I mean, the event itself being there?
I'd be the wrong person to ask. Okay. I really don't know.
All right. Because it just seemed to me if that was not a proper venue for something like that.
Well, I think it was kind of like a house party. I mean, I'm guessing. I know there's an apartment at that space, and, you know, I really don't know. I have a lot of details on it.
If I've slandered anybody,
I
apologize. No, but I think this is the kind of thing you wonder sometimes what the follow-up is. And,
right.
And so, you know, obviously the police can't always talk about it. And,
right. And I don't always know about it, even though people think I do. But, you know, I know about it from the court side because I'm involved that way. But.
Do you have a role in the court other than the transport of
I help them out as they need it. I do, in addition to the criminal side with transporting prisoners, I do civil process, and all that's involved with paperwork through the court. Might be the district court.
But that's one of your responsibilities.
Correct.
As sheriff.
Correct.
Serving a process.
Right. Right. So, and I work with all the courts on that, the Superior Court and the probate and family and the district court as well.
So. What else is part of your duty?
I think just being out there, being in the public eye and talking to people, I feel like that's a good part of my job. You know, helping people out who are in distress.
Can you make arrests?
I can make arrests. I've only made one arrest since I've been sheriff. Something fell into my lap, and you know, it's not the normal thing for the sheriff to make arrests, but I do have that power.
You came into the job 7 years ago, roughly.
Yes.
With a cloud over the office of the sheriff. A lot of that had to do with money.
Right.
And the distribution of money, the deeds excise tax revenues.
Right.
What has happened to that? Was that taken over by the state?
That was taken over by the state a little over a year before I took office, before I got elected. So it ended up the state distributes my budget. They set a budget for me, and that's what I have to work with. So, you know, the deeds excise, it all goes to Boston now. It goes into, I'm not sure if it's the general fund or what, but
it doesn't inure to the benefit of the island or people on the island specifically.
Correct,
anymore.
correct. You know, my budget's a little over $700,000. That's for payroll, that's for my rent in the old police station, that's for cost
Oh,
of...
they don't charge you
No,
much.
they don't, actually, they're very fair, and I love the space, you know, the building has some issues, but my other expenses are paying Barnstable because they hold our custodies for us.
So you pay them a per diem or?
I pay them, it's pretty much a set amount every year. It's about a third of my budget. I also have to pay for transportation back and forth of the prisoners, so.
How, roughly how many nights would that, say, $250,000 pay for?
Well, I think right now we have, I don't know exactly, it's 7 or 8 people in Barnstable. You know, and some of them are pretrials, a few of them are sentenced there for they took a sentence and they're doing their time there.
They, and we have to pay for that?
We do.
Even though if they went to a state facility, we wouldn't have to, right? Or would you?
Correct. No, I think, for instance, on the murder trial 10 or 12 years ago, that person's serving time in a state prison, and that's not out of my budget.
Right.
But you know, it's, well, just for instance, calendar year 2016, we had 228 prisoner transports. Now, that wasn't separate
Is that
trips.
2 ways? Back and
That
forth?
counted 2 ways,
Yeah.
and that wasn't, you know, separate trips. Sometimes I brought 2 or 3 over at the same trip, but it added up to 228, you know, trips back and forth. So that's a lot of tickets with the prisoners and
You get a lot of frequent
and
flyer
the
miles for
officers.
you,
Yeah.
right?
Well, we used to fly, and then
Yeah.
and then when the airlines had their difficulty, it became next to impossible to get reservations at the last minute. So now it's pretty much always by boat. We've had to charter a few times, charter a plane, but mostly by the Highliner or the steamship. So
You had any incidents with prisoners you transported?
just some mouthy incidents, nothing drastic. Usually by the time they're in my custody, you know, they're shackled at the ankles and have belly chains on, and they know where they're going, or they know what they're there for, and they're embarrassed at that point. So, you know, very little trouble.
What role do you play with respect to the opioid crisis and the administration of Narcan and so forth?
Well, I have Narcan in my office in case I need it. I haven't had to use it. I haven't been on site of any of the ODs. I'm kind of like a step back from that. The police, you know, I'll respond to a call because I carry a radio with a police band, but they're pretty much ahead of me on all that.
Is that a community-wide problem?
Absolutely.
Or is it focused on
No, it
particular
goes.
segments of the
No,
community?
it's community-wide. It's, you know, it's not one segment of the population or another. It's community-wide.
Is there any segment of the community that doesn't seem to be affected by it that you're aware of?
That I'm aware of, well, I would guess the elderly would be probably not so much. But, you know, I've seen it. I had a procedure, a surgical procedure a couple years ago, and when I got out of the hospital, I had a prescription for 40 OxyContin. It says, this is crazy. You know, I can see how people kind of get hooked.
Right.
You know, if people need it. I didn't use it. I used 1 pill the day I was in the hospital, and the rest I turned in. But you know, it's an issue. It's a big. That's part of the big part of the problem.
You raise a good point. If you have something like that, you know, it's been prescribed for you, you don't want it. How do you get rid of it?
You can bring it to one of the pharmacies. You can bring it to the hospital. They have a drug take back several times a year at the pharmacies, but I think the pharmacies would take it anytime, and I think the hospital would as well. And I believe the police department would also.
I think that's an
Yeah.
important
I
thing
mean,
for people to know, because I think
People have their medicine cabinets full of prescriptions. Many of them are expired, but it doesn't matter. You know, if there's a break-in, stuff's there. They should.
or
if they're
a
not
kid or
Right.
somebody takes the
Right.
wrong thing,
Exactly.
whatever.
Yeah, I think that happens often.
Yeah,
but-
because I think I know, I've seen the publicity for the pharmacies, but I didn't know about the police station.
Yeah, the police do it once or twice a year, and they'll take it back
I
anytime.
mean, the problem is if
Right.
you get it, and you don't see the ad for the take
Right.
back or whatever.
Right. Well, probably have the paper or Gino TV do a public service announcement. And
Did you get that,
Yeah.
Gino?
yeah, Gino, did you hear that?
What other issues does the island face from a crime standpoint these days?
Well, I think public safety is shorthanded. I know the police department has trouble keeping people here. Their guys are great, the guys and gals, but they lose people because, I guess, probably foremost because of the housing. I don't know what the answer to that is. We're all aware of it. It's in the paper almost every week. The different issues with housing. Unfortunately, I don't think we can house everybody who needs to be housed here.
Well, I've
Yeah.
also heard that some have left because it's not fast enough for them or dangerous enough for them.
Well, I don't know about that. I think it would be hard to rise up in the ranks here because it's such a small department. But I think the police and the fire as well need more staffing. It's a small island in the winter, but in the summer we're a city. 60 or 70,000, whatever it is. So.
Are there changes that you would like to see in the sheriff's role? I know it's pretty well statutorily.
Yeah, I can
Set,
only do so much. I will say I hired a full-time deputy in the beginning of June, and that's helped me out a lot because I was doing most of the transports and civil process myself, along with the ladies in the office. But then shortly after I hired him, I got a notice from the state that they're going to cut my budget by $100,000. So, and I've always given money back. I've never spent my whole budget, but that's going to put me in a bind. So, that's an issue that I have, and I know it goes across all the other state agencies too. Everybody's got to tighten up, but I've given money back. So I have letters to every state, Ways and Means, and the governor, and every agency that I have to have a letter to plead my case to not cut my budget. So
Is that for this fiscal year?
that's for
Or next year?
fiscal year. Yeah, that's for
19.
19,
basically, yeah.
right.
The state sheriff's organization,
Yeah.
is at one time I think was considered to be fairly politically powerful in the state. Is that still the case from your point of view?
That's interesting. We have meetings almost every month, and they talk about that. The sheriffs still do have quite a bit of power. I mean,
Clout.
clout,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they're everybody's elected. My job, of course, in that group is I'm the only one that doesn't have a jail. So, but my issues are the same.
I'm sure that doesn't bother you.
Well, it doesn't bother me, and they're all all the other sheriffs are jealous of that. But on the one hand, I do things that they don't do. They're mostly executives, the other sheriffs.
With larger staffs.
With huge staff, some of them. There are a couple of smaller sheriffs, the Dukes County, they do have a jail. So, they have issues that I don't have, but I have issues that they don't have. I get on the boat with a prisoner and transport.
Takes a lot of time.
Right, and we all work closely together. We're all, other than that difference, the issues are the same, whether it's a department of 10 people or a department of 500 people. And there are some with that large, some of the sheriffs have.
Mainly because of the service of process?
No,
Or-
not even because of the size of their jails.
Really?
24/7,
Yeah.
Plymouth County,
Oh, right,
Suffolk
sure,
County.
they have to have staffing for the
Right,
jail. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, anything else that you think the public should know about the sheriff's job?
well, people ask me a lot, and I talk to people a lot. I'm on the street every day. I like to walk around and talk to people, and I think people have a pretty good idea of what I do, what the job is. So,
Well, good. Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Jim, for coming.
Thank you,
Jim
Dan.
Perelman, Sheriff of the County of Nantucket, and
thanks, Dan.
keep up the good work.
Thank you.